I used to wake up and just doom scroll, but applying to the network school changed that. Now I use AI to create instead of consume. It's not about views, it's about learning. Creating gives you back your agency.
So I want you to picture the ultimate global safe haven.
Right.
When you think of that, you probably imagine, snow-capped Alps, impenetrable bank vaults, and just this strict, unquestionable neutrality.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Switzerland has spent decades marketing itself as the undisputed capital of global privacy.
Exactly. But today, we are taking you on a deep dive into what privacy advocates are calling the Swiss paradox.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating paradox.
It really is. We are unpacking this massive stack of sources today. We've got leaked tech industry warnings, detailed YouTube analyses, official Swiss government press releases, and even federal court rulings.
And we're using all of that to uncover a huge kind of quiet shift that's happening right now.
Right. We're going to explore how a nation that is famous for direct democracy is, well, quietly building a digital surveillance state.
Which is wild, and we'll look at why major privacy companies are basically fleeing the country.
Yeah, and what happens when the legal architecture of a privacy haven is turned against its own citizens.
It's a huge deal.
It is. So, to you listening, whether you use a Swiss secure email provider, maybe a VPN, or if you just care about where your personal data lives in the cloud, the rules of the game are changing overnight.
You really are.
Let's find out exactly what that means for you. So, let's start with this illusion of the privacy haven.
Okay, yeah. Let's get into the trust trap.
Right, because if you look at the surface level, Switzerland recently revised its Federal Act on Data Protection, the FADP.
Right, their version of GDPR.
Exactly. And they brag about mirroring Europe's GDPR, boasting about constitutional privacy rights and independent oversight.
On paper, it looks like a complete privacy utopia.
It really does. But then you have these global indexes, like the Human Freedom Index, and they still rank Switzerland at the very top.
Yeah, usually number 1 or 2 globally.
Right. So how does a country building a surveillance state stay at the top of a freedom index?
Well, it's kind of an index illusion, The Human Freedom Index, the HFI, it averages scores across over 80 different indicators.
Wow, 80?
Yeah. We're talking business regulations, property rights, freedom of movement, all that stuff.
Okay, so it's a huge average.
Exactly. So because Switzerland has incredibly free markets and, really clean functional courts, its massive digital surveillance capabilities are just mathematically masked.
Masked by all the other good scores.
Right. It's like a student getting an A+ in physics, chemistry, literature, and gym, but pulling a total 0 in digital privacy.
Yeah, when you average out the GPA, they're still on the honor roll.
Exactly. The surveillance data just gets buried in the math. But if you look at specialized indexes like Freedom House's Freedom on the Net report.
Well, that paints a much darker picture, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When you isolate the technology variables, you see this dark reality of mandatory data retention and network monitoring.
Okay, but this brings up a huge question for me. Switzerland is famous for direct democracy.
Right, the referendums.
Yeah. Citizens vote on everything, so why aren't they pushing back against this?
Well, this is a really fascinating concept from the sources. It's called the trust trap.
The trust trap.
Yeah. It happens in these highly prosperous, high-trust societies. Switzerland, Denmark, New Zealand.
Okay.
In these countries, citizens view their governments as, benign administrators. They aren't oppressive regimes.
Right. You trust the system.
Exactly. The public just doesn't push back against surveillance the way citizens in, say, the U.S. might, because they assume the government will only use it for good.
Okay, so just to push back on that a little bit. So because the Swiss government isn't out there arresting political dissidents, citizens just willingly hand over the keys to their digital lives.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, it's like leaving your front door wide open in a huge city just because you really like your current mayor.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah. You're building an infrastructure that any future less friendly mayor could easily abuse.
You are. But the distinction the public makes, and this is key, is between procedural surveillance and arbitrary surveillance.
Okay, break that down for me.
Procedural surveillance is bounded by law, right? It goes through parliamentary committees, there are judges, bureaucrats.
It feels official and safe.
Exactly. Arbitrary surveillance is what authoritarian regimes do. It's violent and unpredictable.
Okay, but mechanically the technology doesn't care.
No, mechanically the digital panopticon operates exactly the same way. The cameras and the logs don't care who is in office.
Wow. Okay, so let's move from the philosophy to the actual mechanics of this panopticon.
Yeah, let's talk about the VPF.
Because this isn't just theoretical. There is a very specific piece of legislation driving this shift right now.
Yes, the Ordinance on the Surveillance of Postal and Telecommunications Traffic.
What a name.
I know, we'll just call it the VPF. The scope of the proposed updates to this ordinance is just astonishing.
Yeah, the sources talk about this thing called the 5,000 user trap.
Oh, this is wild. The government wants to reclassify basically any digital service. So a VPN, an encrypted email provider, even a chat app as a major telecommunications provider.
But only if they have 5,000 users.
Right. The moment they cross 5,000 users, boom.
I mean, 5,000 users in software is nothing. That's a rounding error.
It's tiny. A regional messaging app for a university or a specialized privacy VPN run by 3 guys in a basement suddenly hits that threshold in a week.
And what happens then?
Well, suddenly they legally need to maintain the exact same massive, hyper-expensive surveillance infrastructure as Swisscom.
Wait, the national telecom giant.
Yes, a 3-person startup needs the same compliance and surveillance plumbing as a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
That's absurd. How could a tiny startup maintain a 247 legal compliance desk just to hand over user data?
They can't. It essentially bankrupts the privacy industry before it can even scale. But the financial part isn't even the scariest bit.
Okay, what is?
It's the death of anonymity. The new ordinance demands that providers collect government IDs just to open an account.
So passports, driver's licenses.
Passports, national ID cards, or a verified registered mobile phone number.
So anonymous email in Switzerland would effectively become illegal.
Completely illegal. You can't just spin up a quick anonymous account to blow the whistle on your corrupt boss.
Wow.
And once they link your ID to your account, they have to retain your metadata for 6 months.
Okay, let's talk about metadata. Because a lot of people think, oh, it's just metadata. They aren't reading the content of my emails.
Right, they think it's harmless.
But metadata is often way more revealing than the actual content.
Oh, significantly more revealing.
It's the IP addresses, port numbers, who you talk to, when and where.
Right. Think about it. If they have the content of a call, an analyst has to sit there and listen to it. But with metadata...
They just feed it into an algorithm.
Exactly. They know you called a suicide hotline at 2 a.m., a divorce lawyer at 9 a.m., and a real estate agent at noon. They don't need to hear a single word you said to know exactly what's happening in your life.
That is terrifying. And they keep that for 6 months.
Fully indexed and searchable by federal authorities, yes.
Unbelievable. But wait, there's another part of this draft, right? Article 50A?
Ah, yes. The decryption mandate.
This demands that providers remove encryption if they hold the keys, delivering data to authorities in plain text.
Right. They have to strip the cryptographic protections off the traffic.
But wait, the response time is what gets me here. 6 hours.
Yeah, the processing deadline for authorities' requests is dropping from 1 working day to just 6 hours for large providers.
So a request comes in at midnight on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And by 6 a.m. on Sunday, you have to have the data decrypted and securely sent to the police.
Yep. If you don't, you're breaking the law.
How does anyone comply with that?
It requires a massive 247 engineering and legal team. It's designed to weed out smaller players.
Okay, but hold on. If this is so incredibly invasive, why didn't the Swiss public vote against it? Like we said, their whole identity is built on direct democracy.
Right. They vote on everything from taxes to immigration limits.
So why did they vote this down?
Well, here's where we get into the workaround. Because the government is basically bypassing direct democracy.
Yeah.
Let's look at the baseline. In 2016, the Swiss public did actually vote on a surveillance law called the VÜPF.
Okay.
And they passed it with 65% support.
Wow, 65%.
Yeah, that's the trust trap right there. They willingly granted powers for cell phone tracking and government Trojans.
But that was a public vote.
Right, it was a public vote. But then, fast forward to 2021, there were these massive Supreme Court battles.
Oh, right, the Threema and Proton mail cases.
Exactly. Threema and Proton successfully sued the federal government.
Good for them. What was the argument?
They proved they were over-the-top services OTTs.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Meaning they aren't traditional telecoms, they don't lay the physical fiber optic cables, they just provide software that runs over the internet.
Got it.
And the Supreme Court agreed. They ruled that OTTs are exempt from these invasive data retention laws.
So the tech companies won.
They won a huge victory. The government completely lost in court.
But the government didn't just give up, did they?
Of course not. And this is where it gets really interesting and honestly pretty alarming.
Yeah, tell me about the executive decree.
Because the government lost in court, the Federal Council and the Department of Justice and Police are using an executive decree to update the administrative ordinance of the law.
Wait, so they're just updating the ordinance unilaterally?
Yes. They are bypassing the parliamentary process completely.
That's a systemic shock.
It really is. By using an ordinance update instead of a new law, they remove the possibility of a public referendum. The public doesn't get to vote on ordinances.
So they're just rewriting the rules themselves to override their Supreme Court losses.
Unilaterally. It's a complete workaround of the democratic process.
And I want to point out, based on the source reporting, this move has united normally completely opposed political factions.
Oh, it's wild. It's brought the far left and the far right together.
Right. You have left-wing MPs warning of a slide into a surveillance state.
Yeah.
And then on the exact opposite side, you have the right-wing Swiss People's Party, the SVP, heavily criticizing it too.
Because of the economic burden it places on small and medium businesses.
Exactly. And, we should remind you listening, we aren't taking a side here. We are just highlighting how universally controversial this bypass is.
When the left and the right agree that the government has overreached, you know it's a massive deal.
Absolutely. So when a government rewrites the rules to trap businesses in an expensive surveillance net, what do those businesses do?
They leave.
They leave. Which brings us to the great exodus of 2025.
It's a huge geographical irony.
It really is. For years, European tech companies fled to Switzerland to escape EU surveillance.
And now, companies are fleeing Switzerland for the EU.
It's totally flipped. Why is the EU suddenly looking better?
Because under EU law specifically, the GDPR and various German constitutional rulings blanket, non-targeted data retention is strictly illegal.
Wait, really? The EU is stricter on the government.
Oh, yeah. The European Court of Justice has repeatedly struck down laws that try to force telecoms to just log everyone's metadata indiscriminately.
So the EU actually demands that surveillance be targeted.
Exactly. Targeted based on reasonable suspicion and with judicial oversight.
Which means Switzerland is now legally worse for privacy than the European Union.
Yep. And the privacy companies responded aggressively. Let's talk about Proton Mail's 100 million move.
Yeah, Proton was like the poster child for Swiss privacy.
The absolute poster child. But in July 2025, they announced they were moving their physical infrastructure out of Switzerland.
Wow.
They invested over 100 million euros to build and migrate servers in Germany and Norway.
100 million euros. Moving petabytes of data across borders while keeping it encrypted and online. That is not a PR stunt.
No, that is an existential business decision. And they even intentionally hosted their new AI assistant, Lumo, entirely outside of Switzerland from day one.
Just to avoid this VPF mandate.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just them. There was a massive industry outcry.
Yeah, Mailbox.org, Tuta, Threema, they all issued stark warnings.
Tuta explicitly warned that Swiss surveillance is now worse than in the U.S.
Think about that. Worse than the U.S.
That's a brutal statement. And the Swiss Tech Association, SWICO, called the move unverhältnismäßig, disproportionate and legally problematic.
It is. I mean, to frame
And it's like a bank driving away its wealthiest depositors by replacing its foot-thick vault doors with clear glass.
That's exactly what it is.
They are destroying the very industry that put them on the modern digital map. Switzerland's reputation is entirely dependent on legal protections that actually work.
Right.
Once those laws change, the country is literally just another server farm. There's nothing special about the Alps if the police can demand all your data in 6 hours.
Nothing at all.
So you listening might be wondering, is this just theoretical legal posturing? Or is surveillance actually increasing on the ground right now?
Oh, it's definitely increasing. Let's look at the bureaucracy of surveillance.
You brought some hard data from the Swiss Telecommunications Surveillance Service, right? The PTSS.
Yes, and their statistics for 2024 are alarming. They show that antenna searches literally doubled in a single year.
Okay, an antenna search. That's sweeping up all network accesses in a specific physical location over a specific time, right?
Exactly. Basically, a dragnet. Real-time surveillance is spiking.
Why did it double in 1 year? Did crime double?
No, crime didn't double. What changed was a seemingly boring bureaucratic detail with explosive implications.
Okay, what was the detail?
The way surveillance is funded changed.
Funding?
Yeah. Previously, if a local police department wanted to order a wiretap or an antenna search, they had to pay a fee per individual surveillance request out of their own specific departmental budget.
Oh, I see. So it cost them visible money every time they wanted to spy on someone.
Exactly. It was a line item.
Yeah.
But recently, this shifted to a lump sum model funded jointly by the federal government and the cantons.
Wow. So they removed the per-request cost.
Yep. The financial friction of surveillance completely disappeared.
So for a local detective, ordering a metadata sweep suddenly feels free to their specific budget.
Exactly. And behavioral economics tells us that when a powerful tool becomes free, usage skyrockets.
So they're casting the net way wider.
Much wider.
Right.
For vastly lower level offenses. We aren't just talking terrorism here.
No, I imagine they're using it for ordinary crimes now.
Over 40% of these requests are for property crimes. Stolen bicycles, vandalism.
You're kidding? They are using dragnets for stolen bicycles.
Yes, because the financial barrier is gone.
That is mission creep in its purest form.
And at the same time, the National Council voted to widely expand the Federal Intelligence Service's powers, the FIS.
What new powers did they get?
Oh, they can now monitor foreign state influence, tap financial data directly from intermediaries, fit tracking devices to vehicles.
And the AI stuff, right?
Yeah, the AI. They are authorized to build AI-driven personality profiles of suspects using retained metadata.
Meaning they just feed your data into a machine learning algorithm and it groups you based on mathematical similarities in your routine.
Predicting dissent before it even happens.
Unbelievable. So with companies fleeing and surveillance spiking like this, did civil society just roll over and accept it?
No, they didn't. This sparked a massive pushback.
Right, let's talk about the resistance.
This came to a head in late 2025 and early 2026.
Starting with that landmark court ruling in November 2025.
Yes. Judgment A6442-2020. The Federal Administrative Court issued a massive ruling.
Unpack that for us. What did they rule?
The court ruled that the FIS's bulk interception of cross-border radio and cable communication.
Basically tapping the massive fiber optic cables at the border.
Exactly. The court ruled that this violates the Swiss Constitution and the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR.
That is a huge blow to the intelligence agencies.
Massive. The court found there were literally zero safeguards to protect journalistic sources or attorney-client privilege.
So they were just vacuuming up everything indiscriminately.
Everything. And the court said, you can't do this. They gave the legislature 5 years to fix the Intelligence Act, or the bulk monitoring must be shut down entirely.
5 years to rebuild it legally, or they pull the plug on the servers.
Exactly. And that ruling really energized the public.
Yeah, you mentioned the 15,000 signatures.
Right. Civil society gathered 15,000 signatures and delivered them directly to the federal counselor opposing the VPF updates.
And then there was that open letter in February 2026.
From 19 different NGOs, including EDR European Digital Rights.
And they warned that the VPF creates massive cybersecurity risks, right?
Yeah, they argued that forcing small startups to collect government IDs and retain metadata basically creates thousands of vulnerable honeypots for hackers.
Because a tiny startup doesn't have the cybersecurity budget to fight off a nation-state hacking group.
Exactly. But EDRE also threatens something much bigger economically.
Oh, the adequacy status.
Yes. They warned that this surveillance regime threatens Switzerland's adequacy status with the EU.
Okay, for anybody who doesn't know, adequacy status means the EU legally recognizes your country as safe for data transfers.
Right. If Switzerland loses that status, it would economically isolate them from the entire European market.
Every Swiss bank, insurance company, cloud provider, they'd instantly face massive legal hurdles just to do business with Europe.
It would be economically catastrophic.
So you have companies fleeing, a devastating court ruling, 15,000 angry citizens, and the threat of economic isolation from the EU.
Yeah.
And it actually worked, didn't it?
It did. In February 2026, the government finally backpedaled.
The climax of the resistance. The Federal Council was forced to hit the brakes.
Facing intense parliamentary pressure, they announced they are pausing the entire VPF revision.
Pausing it.
Yes. They are commissioning an external regulatory impact assessment, an RFA, to calculate the economic damage this would cause.
Good.
And in a highly unusual move, they promised to hold a second public consultation phase once they have a new draft.
Which is a massive tactical retreat by the executive branch.
Absolutely. They completely miscalculated the resistance they would face by trying to bypass the democratic process.
But, you know, we have to recognize that the government's desire for this visibility hasn't vanished.
Oh, not at all. It's just paused. The intelligence agencies still want that data.
Right. So let's summarize this journey. Because the Swiss paradox is very real.
It's incredibly real.
You have a country renowned for privacy fighting a fierce internal battle.
Between intelligence agencies seeking ultimate visibility and an industry and civil society fighting for fundamental digital rights.
And the backpedal in 2026 shows the fight isn't over. It's just paused.
Exactly. It requires constant vigilance.
Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to ponder. Because for decades, we all believed that privacy was geographic, right?
Yeah, that if you put your data on a Swiss server, you were safe because of Swiss laws.
But as governments worldwide quietly alter their legal codes, sometimes overnight by executive decree, maybe true privacy can no longer rely on geography.
It really can't. Borders don't protect data the way they used to.
If the laws can change that fast, perhaps the only real safe haven left isn't a country at all.
It's mathematics.
Exactly. Mathematics, end-to-end asymmetric encryption, where no one, not even the provider, holds the key.
Because a government can subpoena a server, but they cannot legislate the factorization of a crime number.
Boom. That's it, exactly. Math is immune to executive decrees.
It's the only real sanctuary left.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the Swiss paradox. We really encourage you to question where your data lives, look at the architecture of the tools you rely on, and ask yourself, who really holds the keys to your digital life?
I used to wake up and just doom scroll, but applying to the network school changed that. Now I use AI to create instead of consume. It's not about views, it's about learning. Creating gives you back your agency.